Welcome to Adobe APAC Live. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My name's Flynn, and I'm really excited to be your host this afternoon for this very special Adobe APAC Live. We've got two awesome guests. So we have Matthew Vandeputte. Hey, Matt, how are you going?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm really good. And Selena Miles, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you both for joining us. For those that are new to the live stream, you can log in to Adobe APAC Live using your Adobe ID, just in the top right-hand corner. Log in just using, your standard Adobe ID that you use to log in with your stuff. If you don't have one, that's cool. You can just log in. You can create an account, and then you can log in quickly, easily, and free. And if you do that, you can ask us questions during the stream. So back to our guests. How are you guys both going? We've pulled you away from projects just to get you in here today.
I think it's the worst time, possibly the worst day of the whole year.
Oh, wow.
But I really wanted to do this.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here. But yeah, I've got a pretty hectic day on. A lot of prep work, a lot of finishing up projects. I've got 3 trips coming up starting tomorrow till like mid-Jan.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to prepare everything today so I can clear, get it out of my mind.
Wow.
And it's all sorted. Yeah.
Super lucky to have you here. And Selena, I know that we're chatting to you about it and like, okay, cool. If we're finishing right on 3, that's cool, because I've got to go back and finish the project. So what are you working on today? What have we dragged you away from?
Literally the polar opposite of your life right now. I'm editing a feature documentary, so I've been in the same room every day for the past 9 weeks, and 3 more weeks to go.
Wow.
With a small team of about seven of us, finishing up post-production, so editing and organising archive and music and things like that.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
And so maybe we could start off with you, Matt. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what it is that you do. Like, what's a day in the life of what you get up to?
Day in my life is trying to get up early enough so I don't waste the morning.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a benefit or the downside of being, self-employed.
Mm.
But with what I do, there's always something that has to be edited. So pretty much my main source of income is time-lapse photography, commercial projects where I shoot for clients and create content for them. On the side, I've decided to build, semi-build a career on social media. So I'm running a bunch of channels where I show people what I do and how I do it. So I teach a lot on my channels. But to keep that going, you always need to work on new content. So I'm always mid-edit of something.
Right.
Today it's an educational video of how to shoot cinematic content on a smartphone. And I want to finish that today because I'm leaving tomorrow. But yeah, day in my life, I wake up, do like the basic admin stuff, just like emails and all that, get it out of the way.
Yep.
And then usually I turn off my my Wi-Fi and I just start editing. Because I get distracted so easily.
Oh, is that a trick, like to get off the internet? It's just to focus.
I wouldn't call it a trick. I'd call it a necessity almost. Because I tweeted this earlier this week, and a lot of people related to it. It's impressive how easily I get distracted. You're like, oh, this is rendering. I just got to wait for something. I'll just check my Twitter real quick, and then 2 hours later, I'm on
where am I?
some Wikipedia page reading about the history of trains. I don't know.
Totally.
Some dumb stuff like that. But yeah, a lot of self-control, and then trying to do as much as possible in a day. And I work with lists, maybe you as well, because there's always so much stuff going on. Just like tick them off or like cross them off.
So you're a list maker. You like to write stuff down, cross it out, tick it.
That feeling is so nice.
That's great, right? Do you start with a couple of things you've already done just to cross them off, just to make yourself feel like...
Start the list.
Start the list? Check.
Cross the first thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely a list maker. Do you use lists?
Yes.
Yeah.
I use all kinds of different project management softwares and different strategies. And when you're working with a team, often someone will have their thing, and so we end up using so many different platforms it gets a little bit ridiculous. But yeah, lists are essential, especially on a long-term project. But yeah, I also keep lists in my head, which are... is not the most practical way to do it, but works for me. So.
And so back to you, Selena. So can you tell us a little bit, day in the life, like what?
Yes, sure.
What is a day in your life at the moment?
I'm sort of on a new frontier personally in my career. I'm working on my first feature documentary. So my life used to be a lot more like Matt's in that I was traveling, shooting in different countries, and I spent 3 years without a base. Moved to Sydney 12 months ago, and about 6 months into that, I've had to basically go into lockdown and say no to every other project until I finish this big one. So it's been a real learning curve on so many levels for me, but it's a wonderful learning experience. Every day is something new, and I feel very, very lucky and privileged to be able to go through this experience, because there's only so many films that get made every year in Australia, especially independent documentaries, especially art documentaries. So just trying to appreciate every step of the process, even the ones that at the moment might not feel that great.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and just sort of building new skills and getting more and more excited for release now as we get pretty close.
So how long does a project like this go for? How long have you been working on this particular project?
This particular project started as sort of by accident. So my subject, I met her at a street art festival in Tahiti
Of course.
about 2 or 3 years ago, but had known of her. You know, she's kind of iconic. Well, she's absolutely iconic within the street art graffiti community and the photography community. And I'd been making a series of 10-minute documentaries about artists.
Right.
And I asked her if I could make one about her, and she said yes. And so I went to New York thinking I'd make something of 10 minutes, you know, and very quickly realised that 10 minutes there's no way that was going to cover it. So that was January last year.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're talking a long project.
2 years. 2 years.
How many trips back and forth have you done to New York?
I'm not entirely sure.
Enough.
Lots and lots. Like, I think it's been at least maybe 7 or 8 trips.
Wow.
One of them was 2 months.
You're on first name basis with everyone at customs at New York Airport.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's always an adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so lots and lots of back and forth, but it's New York, so it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
That's such a great
It's a lot
space.
Yeah.
Is this Martha? Is
Yes.
this that project?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, I think actually maybe we can talk about that in a little bit more detail if you don't mind. We actually have some
Sure, let's
images
do it.
I think that we're going to bring up onto
Okay.
the screen
Yeah.
that we can talk to.
Yeah, we don't. So I unfortunately, I wish that I had some video that I could show, but because we're still editing and it's, you know, nothing has been released yet. So, but I have managed to get a few stills which I've released to the world for now. And this is my subject, Martha, in the middle. This is Martha Cooper. She's a journalist and a photographer from New York, and here she is with Os Gêmeos, who are an artistic duo from Sao Paulo in Brazil. They're street artists, graffiti artists, extremely successful, amazing guys. I don't know if anyone wants to check out their work, but it's wonderful. And I love this picture because it really embodies like a lot of the themes in the film, which is about Martha's contribution to street art and graffiti and the impact that her work has had on people's lives. And that's really what the film is about. So if we go to the next image, this is why she's so loved by so many people. This is just one of like 100 of these types of images that I have, but basically Martha started photographing graffiti in New York in the 1970s when it was first forming.
Wow.
And she was one of very few people that that photographed it as thoroughly as she did. And she published a book along with Henry Chalfant called Subway Art, which has become, it's known sort of globally as the Bible of graffiti.
Right.
Everybody that started doing graffiti before the internet, like, studied every page of this book. Like, it was, you know, like a Bible. That's, that's what they call it. So,
yeah.
20 years went by and no one really paid any attention to this book until the internet came around, and as street art sort of happened and became a global phenomenon, Martha became this icon, you know.
Right.
And she's 75 years old now, and she's still traveling full-time, photographing street art and graffiti around the world.
She's still going.
Yes.
Wow.
So the next image you'll see is one that I grabbed from her studio. She was sitting on a computer, and I just noticed her, this is just her, you know, like her temporary hard drives, like her field drives that she just had sitting next to her computer, and you can see some of the places that she's been this year. So Guadalajara, Medellin, Miami, Moscow, Slovakia, Tahiti, TEDx, Vienna. Like, she's a powerhouse, you know.
Wow.
Like more than any of us, she's still going, like, full time.
That's crazy.
She's extremely dedicated. And the last image is of some guys that I interviewed as part of the documentary. So these is the One Up crew, which are they're a crew from Germany that do graffiti videos, and Martha recently just did a book with these guys. So
Cool.
she's like running around train tracks in Berlin and documenting modern graffiti 40 years after it began.
It's amazing. So she's seen like the whole
The whole
gamut.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like from the
beginning to
genesis, like
end.
in the best place it could be, to where it is today.
Yeah, yeah.
Phenomenal. So how much time do you get to spend with her?
I've followed her to Berlin, Miami, Baltimore, where she's from, and she's has a project there, New York. So we've spent a lot of time together over the last 2 years. Yeah, that's one of the things that I was quite lucky that I did get sort of unlimited time with her. She's been amazingly patient with me and given me a lot of her time. So yeah, it's an ongoing project, but I think we're finished filming now. At
Right.
some point you have to just say, I mean, you could go on forever if
Yeah.
you didn't put some boundaries around it. So I think that we're done now. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
I could go on
Yeah.
further asking you questions about this project, but we'll keep moving on. So, Matt, I wanted to have a look at a recent project that you've done.
Yeah.
We actually have a clip of yours. So just to give the audience a bit of an understanding of your amazing time-lapse work, do you want to set this up for us?
Yeah, sure. About a bit over a year ago, I went to Vanuatu, which is a Pacific island nation, about 4 hours, 3.5 hours east of Australia. And I feel like it's been flying under the radar for quite a while as how amazing it is. There is such a diverse landscape. The people there are incredible. The stories are amazing. I went there 2 or 3 years ago on a tourism campaign to show off the natural beauty after they were absolutely ravaged by a couple of cyclones, like 3 years in a row. It took them a year to rebuild everything. And when that was done, they flew in a bunch of Instagrammers. And I don't love that word, but that's what we were called on that trip.
Right.
Influencers, Instagrammers, to show off, what this island group had to offer to get tourism back up. And I fell in love with that place on that trip. I was, it's like jungle, it's raw, it's really, really quite a special place, and the people are amazing. And I decided, I want to go back and shoot more after that first trip where it was very limited what you are allowed to do, because we need you to show off this blue hole and that beach and this tourism operator. So that was going along with the agenda, I guess, of the tourism board. So I decided to go back myself, bring a friend with me, Jeff from New Zealand, who's like an eco warrior. He's the greenest guy I know. Super awesome dude, super driven, passionate, knowledgeable, and we both went to Vanuatu with we set out to make something, a documentary, a film, a series, whatever. We're just going to go there. We have no plans. We'll figure it out when we get there. So we get to Port Vila, which is the capital, and we meet a biologist that's part of the government. They work to, what do you call it, conservation efforts all across the islands. And he takes us kind of under his wing and takes us to his little island, Tana, which is very, very famous for its volcano. There's a lot of volcanoes there, but this is the world's most active volcano. It's the longest continuously erupting little hill. And I visited that volcano 2 years before, but now we would be able to go back and have more time, and I could shoot it the way I wanted it. And eventually, after 10 days, I think, on the island, we shot a bunch, and we shot so many stories as well. But I know a fair amount about documentary editing and stuff, but I'm just sitting in front of such a huge amount of work, and I want to do it properly, but I feel like I should team up with people like you to maybe think more about the structure of this doco that we set out to make. What I did walk away with was a bunch of cinematic footage, including time lapses and slow motions, of this one volcano on the island that we stayed on for about 10 days. So I made this thing for my YouTube channel, and people loved it. And there's a few shots in there that I was dreaming of for years and years, because I knew about this place, I had it in my mind, I wanted to do it, but I couldn't do it the first time around, and then we actually managed to shoot it. So it's a very special little project for me personally. It didn't get a bunch of views or anything, but I'm just happy I made it, and the people that did watch it, everyone's like, wow, that's pretty wild.
Oh, well, let's share it. Let's
Yeah.
that sounds awesome. Let's have a look at it. Had you been to the island before?
Yeah, but very briefly.
Right.
I think about 24 hours or something like that. So it's a stunning landscape. It looks like Mars just behind the greenery because it's all the ash, like that's, you know, sulfuric, whatever, all the smoke and stuff coming out of the volcano, and then all the ash lands on the landscape, so everything's just black.
Wow.
And then when the sun's setting, it lights up the smoke, and it's truly something else. There's a lot of tourists that go there, so you're very limited in what you can do, because it's kind of regulated, but it's also really not regulated. Because if you trip, you either roll down the hill on, you know, into the pit of lava.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like something you want to do. Yeah.
And you fall into like the side of the mountain pretty much.
Yeah.
So this is where we stayed. The mountain's just behind it. There's like orange glow in the sky continuously if you shoot it with long exposure photos.
Wow.
There's no light pollution, so it looks like it. And this is a shot I dreamt of for a couple of years. It's from private land that we had permission to access, with a bit of cloud, and then the stars in the Milky Way crossing the night sky with this pit of molten rock lighting up the clouds from underneath.
Wow.
It's really something else.
And what do you shoot with? Do you often just have, like, what's a basic snapshot at your setup?
Probably 2 to 3 cameras, 2 to 3 tripods.
Right.
Depending on the trip and how much weight I can carry. It's a bunch of motion control gear, a lot of fast lenses for the astro stuff, because you need a lot of light to fall onto the sensor. This is shot on a 1DX in slow motion on a video tripod. So that shot, you could see it. It's super loud. It is an explosion. There's a shock wave. It hits you, and that's why the camera moves. Because you get hit by a blast of whatever an explosion puts out. It's an air wave. It's hot. It's super hot. Your mouth's full of ash. If you rub your lens, you ruin it, because they're little shards of glass pretty much flying around.
Wow, incredible.
It's a very raw and a very real experience. And when I went on that volcano for the first time, I walked away without any good footage, because I was so captivated and literally in awe. It was awesome, like in the truest sense of the word. This is where you can see the stars peeking through the clouds. I just completely messed up shooting, because I was so impressed with what I was looking at. And it was the most, it's really raw. And it changed me, because it gave me another type of appreciation for the planet that we're on.
Right.
That first trip, and it's been, you know, in my mind ever since, to go back and kind of pay tribute, I guess, to this place. Because the issue with a lot of these types of islands is they are feeling climate change the most. So the story we shot when we went back is about all these people living in different villages and tribes, and they have these stories where people are saying the trees are walking to the ocean and they fall in the ocean. But it's coastal erosion from wilder, you know, cyclones and weather that's just eating away their islands. We found so many stories of over the span of 2-3 generations where they're talking about how they, you know, survive. It's fruits and roots and fish as well. And the fish used to be this big, and now we've got footage of young boys fishing, and the fish are like this.
Oh, wow.
And there's no more turtles, which is a very important thing they use for ceremonies, like marriages and stuff, or you know, young kids. And just very impactful how these tribes are so aware of what's going on, because everyone's like, yeah, it's you guys.
Yeah.
You're burning up the planet, and we're feeling it here first. So they're acting on it in every sense. They're setting up marine reserves. They're setting up protected areas in forests where you can't hunt for birds and stuff. And it was crazy how big the contrast is between how little we're doing in the West. If you look at it across what everyone's doing, there's still so much counter movement. Whereas these guys are like fully, like, what can we do? We set up a marine reserve, and we shot Alfred, who set up his little coral reef protected area. No one can fish there. He moved on to the beach to scout if anyone would come and fish in his protected area, which was his tribe's area.
Wow.
And a few weeks ago, I was told by Jeff, who's stayed in touch with Alfred, that it's worked. And he's been setting up workshops after we talked to him, like, well, you need to share your knowledge and your experience with this marine reserve. He's been doing that all around the island. And they're setting up more of these reserves, and there's more fish coming back, which is so heartwarming. But it's also so sad, because it's such a small thing, and what we're doing in the West, still opening up new coal mines, and still, you know, it's really heartbreaking.
Oh, wow.
I think we need those little stories like
Yeah.
of victory, though. Like,
Totally.
I think they're
Totally.
extremely important.
Mhm.
And I think that everybody needs to do their part, which is
Yeah.
what that embodies, you know.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, like you were saying, how much of a huge percentage of their life has changed and
Yeah.
how little ours really has
Yeah.
to fight it. So, but I thought we might move on to something that was pretty interesting we were chatting about beforehand, which was how you guys got to know each other, and then kind of segue into a bit of community conversation. So how did
Yeah.
you guys know each other?
The internet, right? I'll let you tell the story.
Yeah.
do you want me to do?
I don't remember the first contact,
Yeah.
but basically we bonded over a shared love of time lapse.
Yeah.
via
I think
the
specifically hyperlapse photography.
internet.
right?
Hyperlapse, definitely hyperlapse. Yeah.
So I think I found you when you did your Limitless video,
Yes.
and I saw this. I was like, "This is so cool!" So I looked up who made it. I was like, "Oh, Selena Miles from Brisbane, I think at the time," and maybe I reached out because I don't think there was a way that you would have reached out to me. I was like, "Hey, like, love that video or something."
I think I was already following you.
Okay,
maybe.
that's cool.
So the power of the internet.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean that's the beauty of, like, you know, there's so many niches, and if you're in a niche, you eventually, if
There's
you're
only
active
so many
enough on
people.
these platforms,
Yeah.
you hear about people. Someone's like, "Have you seen this video?" Because that's how I found it. Probably someone on Facebook shared it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and so you're following each other online, and then you kind of like bump into each other
yeah,
IRL.
so well, we were online friends for like 2
First.
years, 2-3 years maybe.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah,
Easily.
yeah, easy, yeah,
probably
true.
longer.
Yeah, and then a bit over a year ago, we literally bumped into each other at a
At
party.
an event.
Yeah.
At like a screening of a series of short films. Yeah.
And so that's cool. So do you feel like, I mean, obviously the power of the internet, you guys feel like you already kind of somewhat have a relationship? You're like, oh, I know you from
Yeah.
somewhere, I know you from
Yeah,
somewhere,
'cause
and then
it's-
suddenly
yeah.
you feel like you know each other more than just a stranger across the room.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of weirded me out to be, because I saw you, but it didn't fully click that it was you, this person that I know quite well through all these conversations.
Mm.
And I was like, wait, you're like Selena, like, it's, you know, it solidifies like there's an actual person there.
Yeah.
It was very very strange.
Mm. And how important do you think community is for what you guys do?
Huge.
I mean, as a filmmaker, film is such a collaborative pursuit. It's essential.
Yeah.
And it's collaborative, but it can also be extremely isolating.
How so?
Well, I mean, as a director, I don't get to go on other directors' shoots, so I don't really know how anyone else does it unless I find peers and we talk about it. And I
Wow.
say, how's this? And that's such a breath of fresh air sometimes, like getting outside of your own little world, and also like finding people to collaborate with, but also subjects and stories, like having a tool like social media to connect with the people that you really are interested in and want to be friends with, no matter where they are, is amazing, you know. Like we were saying earlier, I think I have better friends in Serbia that the English isn't their first language, and I don't speak Serbian, but we have more in common than a lot of people that I meet in Sydney. And that's the world we live in nowadays, and it's only going to become more so, and you can really become so specific of a person nowadays and still find somebody out
You
there
can
in
have
the
your
world.
niche, but then there's like 120,000, a million people that have the same
There's always
passion. Or,
every niche has this community, and you can pretty much pick and choose who you want to reach out. I mean, you can always pick and choose who you reach out to, but if there's a mutually beneficial relationship there, I think no matter what happens, it'll turn into something. That's the cool thing. The annoying thing is when people reach out like, "Hey," and there's nothing.
It's not an exchange.
It's like an off balance.
so they reach out and they want something from you, but
I feel like I feel like maybe people aren't aware, or it comes with, if the bigger you grow on social media, the more people reach out to you.
Sure.
And there's people that reach out to me that I really connect with straight away. Like, I've made quite a few friends this year, even still, after doing the social media thing for so many years now, where I can immediately see from the first message, like, this person, they worded it well, or it's different. Whereas there's someone's like, "Hey, I want to buy you a coffee and pick your brain." I'm like, sorry, what's in it for me?
What does that mean?
At least.
Like, that sounds like work.
Yeah.
Or if someone.
I'd love to have the guts to be able to be like, all right, you can book a session or something, or like, you can pay me for my time.
Yeah.
But I'm too nice of a person.
There's lots of.
I want to do more. That's part of my 2019 strategies.
I think that's a
doing
great
more
idea.
real life workshops and
I think that there's an etiquette around being a mentor and having mentors, which I think that the number one rule is, and I've sort of been on both sides of this equation and learnt by trial and error and made mistakes. And I find that the number one rule with reaching out to someone, if you admire their work or you want to ask them a question, is do your research. And if the answer to your question is one click away, then that's kind of rude to expect that person to take their time to answer your question when you could have found that information online. So if I'm contacting like a filmmaker that I really respect and I want to ask their advice or ask them to comment on something I'm doing, I always say, hey, the reason I'm reaching out to you is because I love that you did this and I was really interested about this. And I've looked, but I haven't found the answer to this question, and this is why I think you're the right person to answer it, and this is what I'm going to get out of it.
That sounds perfect. Yeah.
And all of that groundwork and research shows like a respect and an etiquette that it's really hard to say no to someone when they put that work into asking you a question because they genuinely appreciate what you're doing, you know. So that's the exchange, I think.
Yeah, that's. Yeah. If I get a question like that, I'm like, what's your number? I'll call you now.
Yeah, wow. So I've got a follow-up question for that. Where do you think you learnt those skills? Because I totally agree. Reaching out to people is a lot of what I do, is explain to people, hey, do you want to do this thing? You know, this is what we're asking from you. This is what we're going to do. This is how it works. Just really cut through the tree hole. Always try to get to the point, and always try to make it as clear as possible for everyone. But where do you think you learnt those, like some call them soft skills? Like that's not taught at school, right? Like, how do you figure that out? Is it trial and error, or?
I think it's how you like to be treated. You just see that, look at that the other way.
So it comes back to that respect thing that you were talking about as well.
And I think it's just empathy, like putting yourself in the shoes of the person that you're trying to reach out to and trying to understand how they work and what their needs and hopes and dreams are, and speaking to those rather than just, what lens did you use to shoot that?
It's like, it's in the description of their show.
It's a fundamentally flawed question because the lens isn't the thing that makes the photograph 99.9% of the time. Do you have like a stock response to those types of questions? You must get them so much.
Yeah, and admittedly, when I was at Adobe Max, my eyes opened because I was there with a bunch of other insiders, and they are cutthroat. I'm too nice. You mentioned empathy. I'm a very empathetic person, and turns out I just reply too much and too often and spend too much of my time committing to all these little bits, but it adds up.
Absolutely.
And they're like, you just don't do that. You're better off making something, you know, like a fact sheet, you know, frequently asked questions, or something else. Put another system in place so you can focus more on your craft and your creativity. And I was like, you're right. And I've tried to do that recently, to be a bit shorter in my replies and spend less time on things where I know there's nothing coming back my way. And I'm not saying that you always have to, you know, give something and get something, but when it happens at such a large volume, you got to consider.
There's a balance. And there's a trade-off.
Am I working less, or am I putting less time into certain things because of that?
Sorry to interrupt. I just have a question from the audience. So Marty B asks, it's actually a question for you, Matt. What are the 3 trips that you have coming up?
Good question. So tomorrow I'm flying to Byron Bay, which is a couple hours north of Sydney, for a good friends of mine's wedding, and we're also shooting a video. They're a YouTube couple, so it's this. So
they put you to work at the wedding. Hey, do you want to? You get invited to the wedding, but you have to kind of.
No, it's like everyone's going, but I'm staying in a house with a bunch of mates, and everyone's bringing their gear, and we're just gonna make this huge.
Whoa,
cool.
It's funny because this is like the wedding's more about the video almost in a way.
Yeah.
The wedding's like it's more about
a side event. It's just like what.
But it's fun. They're really fun people. Then I'm back here for a day. Then the next day I'm flying to Western Australia, to this relatively unknown region called the Golden Outback. There's a lot of quirky stuff there. It's a tourism job. So I'll be shooting some videos and doing some, you know, social media posts. Then I'm back here for 2 days, and then I'm flying to Belgium, to Antwerp for Christmas and New Year's. Then I'm flying to London.
That's where you're from originally?
Yeah, Antwerp. Yeah, Antwerpen. So that's all coming up, and I'm trying to finish up a bunch of stuff. That's why my brain's like super fried at the moment.
Yeah.
Because having 1 day to prep a trip and then having 2 days to prep another trip, it's not a lot of time.
It's not a lot of time.
And so many things can go wrong.
Got to get all those dates and all the bookings right, and where you're staying, accommodation, and visas. And
do you have a travel agent? How do you book your own flights? I changed back to a travel agent. I'm like, I don't have time to find the cheapest, like most, you know, viable flight. So I'm like, this is what I need. Can you give me some options, and I'll choose the best one.
Right.
And it doesn't cost me any extra because they get commissions or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was like, how can I spend less time and energy on, or less time worrying about certain things. I was like, I'm going to outsource a few of my
Delegate.
life admin things.
Well, I guess that kind of comes to a topic I was hoping to have time to chat to you guys about, which is about being an independent creative. And so my preface for that was that, I'm from a studio agency kind of culture where there's a very clear hierarchy and you want to get a good job at a good agency, cut your teeth, be a good junior, mid-level, and you go up the ladder. Yeah, exactly what you just did there, Matt, going up this ladder. Whereas I've been lucky enough to spend a bit of time with a lot of independent creatives that are really opening my eyes to just circumventing that entire laddering system and saying, you know what, I'm going to create this stuff that I'm really passionate about, have developed or built or are in, also currently building a community around that passion and just doing the thing that they really, really love to do. And I just kind of wanted to get both of your thoughts on what it's like kind of being an independent creative and putting yourself out there.
Shall I go first?
If you have an answer.
You go first.
Sure. I've definitely had multiple phases of different relationships with this kind of idea, because I started very much as a bedroom YouTuber, I guess you could say. And didn't go to film school, didn't finish university, and just figured out by doing with Google, and there's real merit to that system, because you develop this sort of can-do attitude, I think, in this DIY approach where you're responsible for yourself, and I've compared my mentality to a lot of people my age, in my sort of mid-20s, that had been through film school, and I heard a lot of excuses. People will say things like, oh, I can't shoot my short film yet because I don't have the budget, because I can't get access to the gear, where I was like, never felt entitled to any of those things. I would just get out and just make it happen however it had to happen. And so in that way, I think it can be a really positive thing. On the other side of the coin, I think that there's a lot there's a lot that can be learned from this existing structures, especially like the example I always give is like a traditional film shoot, like, or a production. You have a producer and a director and an editor and a cinematographer, and
Bit of a crew.
they're often opposing forces, and they all have their own agenda, and sometimes you might butt heads with someone because the editor's just worried about the story and the director's worried about this other thing, and the cinematographer only cares about the image, and it's that kind of the push and pull of those opposing forces that makes something really great. And when you don't have that structure, it's easy for one to sort of take over the other. And I also think that the other danger when you're starting out as a freelance creative is understanding what you're worth, understanding your industry, and not getting a foot in the door by depreciating the industry that you're trying to enter, to the point that by the time that you get to a point in your career where you are worth something, no one is getting paid for your job anymore because there's so many people doing it for free.
Right.
The race to the bottom.
Does that make the
totally.
race to the bottom? That's a really good way to put it.
In any creative field, be it design, illustration, film, photo, writing.
You gotta have a lay of the land a little bit, and that's something that you don't see when you're just in your bedroom unless you're proactive about it, and that's something that I've learned over the years. And so I just take what I like about both sides, because I work with agencies and production companies, and there's strengths there, and then I also have moments where I'm like, I'm just going to do things my way, and even though that's not the traditional way of doing it, that's how I like to do it, and that's also fine.
Yep.
And it's about finding your own voice, your own path. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but just having confidence and faith in yourself, and constantly questioning, how can I be better? I think that's where I'm at with it at the moment.
Totally.
But it's a constantly changing
Everything
kind of ethos.
We'll check in a year and see where you're at as well. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, it sounds like it's a constantly evolving thing.
Yeah, totally.
What you mentioned about the pricing or value, I guess, that's why community is so important, and openness about rates and what is your time worth, and should you be charging, is it hourly per project, half day, full day rates? I had zero idea where to look for those answers. but found them eventually through my peers.
So yeah, I'd like to dig into that because you could Google how much should I be
Which I
paid,
did.
but of course,
And there's these,
Doesn't exist.
HTML websites from ages ago, like a camera operator that shoots with this makes that much an hour. I'm like,
yeah,
And it
cool.
doesn't
And I'm
work like
writing
that.
this down, like, well, I'm shooting this. And then in the end, my mate's like, why are you doing hourly rates?
Right.
Do full day or half day? And a half day is like 60 or 70% of a full day. I'm like, that's really smart.
yeah,
And I charge a fair amount of money for what I do because it is niche, it is high quality, but also you want to keep that up. I don't want to undercut anyone. Like if I miss out on a job because it's too expensive, I don't feel like I'm expensive. I know for a lot of other people it might look like that, or people starting out. Like I'm working with rates that when I started out, I'd be like, what?
Yeah.
right.
But now
How
I'm
am I
like,
ever gonna spend all that
it
money?
could be, maybe it should be more, because the value that you know how valuable you are
Yeah,
through talking to people.
I've
and that's it.
Yeah, it's
definitely
interesting.
written to you and been like, hey, I just got offered
Yeah.
this thing. I have no idea what to charge. And you've just been like,
Yeah.
well, this, and
Yeah.
given me the whole rundown.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that so much.
Yeah.
And
It's so frustrating when people just don't want to talk about money because
It
it
is-
helps everyone.
it
It's
is
the opposite
seen
of that
as
race to
a-
the bottom. Just like keep it level, or how can we all increase this
Yeah.
industry?
look
Because
after each
when it
other.
goes down in this big downward spiral, nobody's winning.
Yeah, and it never goes back up. And
Yeah,
it goes
that's
one
the
way.
issue. Yeah, it's really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it is a very difficult thing, I think, for people to talk about, and people think for whatever reason they can't talk about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting how often a lot of what we've been talking about so far has come back to community
Totally.
And,
And,
communication.
and communication.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also like who's answering these questions for you. Like obviously you're reaching out to people that you respect, people that are in the industry, and there's like a real authenticity to the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that look, going back to the mentors thing, like the reason that a mentor will always help you with that stuff is because it's the more that I can help people starting out understand how to know their worth and charge for their work, the more that it's lifting all of us up. And I think that there's nothing to be lost. There's everything to be gained in helping other people sort of get to where they're trying to go. And the more that you know what you're about, I think the less you feel intimidated or threatened by others, so I think it's always a good sign when you're willing to like help others.
Help
Yeah, it
others.
feels great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a
Yeah.
lot of what you do.
Selfish in a way as well.
Right.
Being a mentor, like giving, because it makes you feel good.
have you mentored anybody in that sense?
I was, so when was it? I mentored a photography student at the University of Melbourne a few years ago, I think 3 or 4 years ago. And then I hadn't really done that since because I got so caught up with doing my own thing and all that hustle stuff that everyone's always talking about these days. But then when I went to Adobe Max, it reminded me of how great mentorships are and how valuable they are and how important. So I go back from that, and I think I talked about it in my vlog as well. It's one of the like 4 or 5 key takeaways of Adobe Max for me is how important mentorship is. So I've taken on a person, Chris from Belgium, who's like looking to branch out and doing more photography full time. And then I'm also talking to someone I met in Hawaii who's like super young, super passionate and driven, lives in the most crazy place in the world. And he's looking to get into the whole like social media, but more like photo and video production as well. But yeah, both of these guys I've been staying in touch with weekly and being like, what's going on with this? Doing video calls and I probably shouldn't take on extra work, but it feels great. Like it doesn't really feel like work, and I'm giving back. And it also, when I landed here 5 years ago, because I moved here from Belgium, I had a few people that gave me great opportunities, and it's those people that got me eventually because they kind of like jump started what I was doing, giving me all these opportunities. It's because of those people that I'm probably here now, literally.
Right.
And I hope that I can give that back to someone or a few people or whatever. In a sense, I'm already kind of doing that with my YouTube channel where I give pretty much all of my knowledge away in like tutorials and
yeah, I was going to ask about the
educational
tutorials.
content.
So when did you start doing the tutorials where you're kind of giving it? Because like in one sense, it's like, hey, I'm going to give away. I'm going to backtrack actually.
Yeah.
When I was catching my share car to the airport to go do a panel with some of the people that you guys know, we did this panel about democratizing creativity. I was explaining what we were doing. I said, there's all these independent creatives, they're up there and they're talking about what they do. I was like, why would they give it away for free if they're really good at what they do?
It's not really for free.
Right.
Because there's value in being on that panel.
Sure.
There's value in having
Yeah.
a video that gets 100 or 200,000 views.
Yeah.
That helps, elevate that. And there's value in giving people that gift because they're going to be grateful.
Right.
So in a lot of ways, I really don't look at it as giving it away for free. But even then, like, if it was, I still do it because I don't know, I really enjoy sharing knowledge and making those types of videos, and yeah, it helps the channels grow as well. But and this is growing almost exponentially, and it's such a great feeling. People messaging me, or I was sitting, happened twice in a row. I was shooting an event, someone walks up to me with his girlfriend, was like, "Hi, I'm Owen, I'm from Ireland, I'm a huge fan." His girlfriend was like, "He's actually really nervous." She was like making fun of him. Oh,
Awesome.
that is so cool.
Yeah.
The next day I'm sitting at a restaurant with Amelia, my girlfriend. Someone walks past and they stop and like, "Oh my God, Matt." Like shakes, like puts out his hand to shake my hand, and we took a photo, and he's like, "You've helped me so much with time-lapse work at our research facility." I was like,
Oh,
"What do you
wow.
do?" And
So
they work
cool.
at this University of Sydney doing all this research stuff. So I'm just throwing all these seeds out there, and they'll grow into something. I might not know about them, but I know this value is appreciated by people, and
That's
that's a really cool
amazing.
feeling.
Right. Like you wouldn't have predicted that particular person will get value out of what you're doing. So it must be
But
really,
it's, it's so
really nice,
wide, and
yeah.
people just use it, and they might transform it into something else. Like with the internet now, there's so much knowledge out there.
Right.
Yeah.
That's I like think I everything that I know about software, about everything, I've learned for free online.
Right.
So I don't think it's a new concept. I think
Yeah.
people have been. It's been going on at least since I was starting out, which is 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so for anyone nowadays to be like, "Oh, I'm not gonna share what I know because this is mine," it's like, well, how did you get here?
Yeah.
But,
Also, I think you can do both, because
Yeah.
I've got all this knowledge for free,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm launching a condensed version of all that. It's a little ebook that I've been working on. That's going to be paid. That's a paid product. You're paying for the efficiency of it all.
Mm-hmm.
You can get all this knowledge on my channels, or you just get it in one,
Something that
actual
you spend
product.
time purposely built
Yeah.
to
So
answer all those
you have the
questions.
choice: spend a couple dollars on the product, or go through all my videos and
Yeah.
pick and find what you need to know and pull it together from there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I want to move on to another question's kind of about community and audience. So what advice would you give to aspiring creatives who want to build an audience and or a reputation online today, end of 2018?
Work hard,
Yeah.
be authentic, and authenticity, being genuine, being real. Do what you want to do, and don't. I think it's one of the issues with going to film school or design school. You get kind of locked into these methods of thinking,
Sure.
and that in a way, it can kickstart creativity, but also it can kill creativity, because you're thinking in all these rules, and it can take such a long time to break out of that. But yeah, work hard, be authentic, do your own thing, don't feel limited because of certain rules. Like you described, that you didn't go to film school, but now you're making a feature-length doco. That's pretty cool. And usually, because I don't think you felt constrained by anything. You just I want to do this, and you do it. And then engage with, this is specifically social media, but engage with others in your community. Find your peers, find people that you get along with, that you can ask for help or give advice or work alongside with. I think those are, four, or I don't know how many good pillars.
Some great advice.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think that, so the question is building a following online.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
I think so. And sort of word of mouth reputation as well.
I think that at the center of everything needs to be good work. And I notice sometimes I see people who are very talented but seem to be allowing what's popular or what's going to achieve the most likes
Yeah.
to dictate the type of work that they make. And I think that's an extremely dangerous approach. And I think that you are unique, you have a unique voice, and that's your greatest asset. So rather than make things that you know are going to get the most likes, try and say, hey, what can I contribute to this conversation that no one else can contribute based
Right.
on my experience and my unique skill set and who I am. And I think that if you do that well, and also invest in good publicity and take, be smart about it, but I guess the best way to put it is don't let the tail wag the dog.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's because, we talked about this at Max, I think that the democratization of everything is such a great thing, and it's the reason that I'm sitting here, but it's also, there's this new challenge now for, I think, people starting out, which is because there's so much out there, how do I get off the ground and then sort of maintain some kind of unique presence, and it is a challenge, And
yeah, it's more crowded than it ever has been.
Yeah.
But so yeah, a lot of what we talk about is that the barrier to entry has never been lower. You have access to your fingertips. You can create your own website for free using various things. You can create accounts. You can go to free events. There's all sorts of ways to kind of get up there. But there's many, many more people doing that as well.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of stand out?
Yeah.
I think that's what you said, do your own thing, and if everyone just goes and does the same stuff, and really quickly as well, because you said the threshold's so low and there's so much free knowledge available, the uniqueness will come from your own, point of view, from your own, personality or how you see the world. But it is dangerous how there's just so much of the same. And why is that? Because it does well on social media, but that should never be a thing.
Yeah.
And it's easy to fall into that trap, but yeah.
Like the tail wags the dog analogy,
Yes.
I think.
Yeah. Look inward.
Yeah.
Don't look outward.
Right.
Look outward, but just always be referring inward and saying, what's my point of view, not what is the most popular point of view.
Yeah.
I think that's it, really.
Question for you, because you've done this, going up the ladder with design and more of the classical ladder structure, I guess, of getting where you are in your career.
Sure.
How does it feel, because of that threshold that is so low now, people are coming in and they might start halfway up that ladder already with just the skill level that they have?
Yeah.
Do you feel like the threshold's lower and the people on the further side, they've got to push harder and work harder and become better to keep that gap wider? Do you know
I
what
think
mean?
it's about adapting,
Yeah.
and I think we all need to adapt all the time. So I've definitely been in a hierarchical kind of situation, and now I'm the opposite, because that's the way things are going. So I've been independent for the last 2.5 years. But my education, a lot of my community have all been in that similar step-by-step ladder kind of structure. And I think it's just important to continually be aware of what's happening within your industry, within other adjacent industries, but also just complete other industries like startup culture and tech and things like that has a huge impact on what we're doing here in Sydney, in Australia.
It's cool.
Today.
Again, referring to Max, this is not we weren't told to talk about Max all the time, but it was such a good conference. And I went to a lot of keynotes or talks from people that had nothing to do with my little niche, or no photography, no videography. Went to a few designers, people like Tad Carpenter from, I think, Missouri.
It's amazing.
Amazing talks, and I got so much value out of hearing their perspectives in their, the only thing we have in common is that it's a creative field.
Yeah.
But their approach to, their approach to solutions for problems was so cool to see how they transform in a changing landscape, how you adapt to that, and it is about innovating and pushing and just staying on top of it, I guess.
And I love looking into other industries and kind of getting those little takeaways, because otherwise we all have our own little bubbles. So it's so good to get out of it. This is going so fast, it's unbelievable, but we have a question from the audience. So this is for either of you, I think. What have been your 3 biggest takeaways from 2018?
Oh, that's a tough one.
We can drill that down to what is your biggest, what is a big takeaway, perhaps, just in terms of time.
Oh gosh, do you want to go first while I think about it? Sorry.
Yeah, mental health
Really?
has been a huge challenge for me this year. The year before this year was way too busy, and I was saying yes to everything. You said, I actually wanted to ask you, how do you know when to say no, and is it easy for you to say no to projects?
No.
Okay, good.
Say no to saying no to
because
projects.
I just kept saying yes. I was like, all right, I need to take August off, but then
Something
I
great
didn't,
comes
because Discovery Channel's like, do you want to go to China and be a host on TV for 3 weeks and talk about Mongolian, conquerors? I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. I'll be there. So that's a 4-week thing that was supposed to be a do no work at all.
Right.
And then I went to another project, then I went to Vandeputte, then I went to, I was back to back to back, and then I was going to take December off, and then I get a call from Google, like, do you want to go to Christmas Island to shoot the crab migration? And I'm like,
how do you say no to that?
yes,
Yeah,
that is the coolest
it's
stuff. Like,
hard
David
to say
Attenborough
no.
calls it the most impressive animal event in the world. So I'm like, sign me up, I'll be there. So that's
Yeah.
another like two something trip, and then post-production. And then I got a huge burnout where
Yeah.
I fell down into this hole of zero energy, no drive, no passion, just empathy in the wrong way. I was like, everything was just pissing me off. I was sad, and I was like, damn, I knew it would happen, but I didn't say no. And throughout the year, it's been this up and down. I've had a physical injury as well that's kind of propelled me back into like a depressive state. But seeking, therapy or counseling has helped enormously with that. Being open and talking about it, because so many people reach out. I made a big video about like an update on my health on my channel, and it got triple the amount of views that I usually get, because people are like, wait, what's wrong? And I'm really open about it, and I got hundreds of people contacting me with, their stories.
Relating to.
Yeah. And I mean, it showed me how valuable it is for me as someone with a following to be open about it. Like, from the outside, wow, Matt's always traveling, Matt's seeing all this cool stuff. But Matt also struggles with the amount of work and the pressure, and it's always on.
Yeah.
So staying on top of mental health has been a huge thing for me this year.
So I'd love you to answer the question as well, but just to shout out to the audience, we've got 8 minutes left.
Ooh, okay.
So if you do have any questions, log in using your Adobe ID. Now's your time. We don't have long. We will have to finish at 3. So yeah, your shot. It's gone so quick.
I think, what was I going to say? We were just
I keep
talking
going,
about, no, like about mental health, burnout.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that meant until this year. I like that word gets thrown around a lot, but until it happens to you, you're like, I think when you're a very motivated person and you've freelance, you think that that couldn't happen to me. I love my job so much. Like, I'm so passionate.
I'm like, I love everything.
And then it
I do,
happens, and then all of a
Until
sudden
it
one day you
happens,
don't
yeah.
love your job, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah.
And it's a very difficult thing to escape.
Yeah.
And I had a kind of a life intervention this year. Unwillingly was forced to take 2 months off work because of something that happened in my family, and it was the first time that I'd been in one place for 2 months since 2013.
Wow. Just geographically,
Yeah. And I thought it was so hard for me to make that decision to take that time to spend with that family member who wasn't going to be around for very much longer, because I was terrified that I would be forgotten by the world, or that my career would suffer, or that I had to keep going or else, and I learned from that experience that actually nothing bad happens if you take 2 months off.
The world keeps spinning.
The world keeps spinning, life goes on, and your presence only really matters to you, and you have control over when you step in and step out of that world. And if obviously there's like things like your finances that you have to think about, but it's okay to step out for a moment, and nothing bad is going to happen. It's, no matter where you're at, no matter who calls you, what just came out, like, if you need to take time off, take it off. And especially when it comes to family or anything like that, that stuff is super important. And I know that sounds probably obvious to a lot of people, but I thought that those were my values until I was actually faced with them, and it was actually really difficult. So, but I'm so glad that I made that decision. And actually, the day that I was able to go back to work, I went back to work, and it was like nothing had happened.
Right.
So that was a big learning curve. And the thing about sharing, and being vulnerable, I'm now I'm working on this feature documentary and sort of getting into the world of like storytelling in that context, and all my amazing team drill it into me all day, because this is my first time doing this. They're like, no one wants to sit down and watch a film about a character that doesn't have flaws, that doesn't transform. Like the very basis of all human storytelling is about transformation and growth and learning. So why do we live in this world now where everyone on social media wants to be perfect?
Yeah.
Right.
It's like really quite boring, and like
That's a really cool
and
angle.
like vulnerability is interesting, and struggling and overcoming struggle is interesting. And I think that those aren't conversations we should be ashamed of having. Like, if anything, that's like what makes us human. You know, so that's what I would add to that.
That's amazing.
Totally.
That was such a great question because those were both two incredible answers. Thank you for that. We have a question. So, where do you look for new inspiration when stuck in a creative rut? And I'm going to relegate you to 2 minutes each.
Cool.
A lot of people ask me, like, where do you draw inspiration from? And I've never really considered myself to be a creative or an artist. I'm really good at what I do, and I apply that to wherever I am. So to me, inspiration is just nature, and wherever I am and what I'm looking at can be like a cityscape. Like, I love the skyline of Sydney that transforms from day to night in a time lapse, like the whole sky can flare up. Love the way that looks. Any landscape, any place that just looks cool. I shoot it the way I see it, and then I edit it the way I saw it.
Right.
Then I put it out there. But only recently have I been feeling comfortable enough to say that I am an artist and I am a creative.
That's what I was going to say the whole time.
All
I'm
my peers are always
biting
like,
my lip, like, yes, you are a creative.
But, I mean,
like,
I honestly, I don't feel like it, so I find it difficult to call myself that. But I draw inspiration and all that just from nature, I guess, and wherever I am. Yeah.
Very cool. Selena, stuck in a creative rut, where do you get inspiration from?
just watching films, reading books, listening to music, going for a run. We just talked before about The Oatmeal is this amazing comic, has this thing about like creativity is like breathing, you know, and you breathe out when you output or create something, and you have to breathe in, you know. So I think there's a million different ways to breathe in, but you've got to like make time for it. That's all I'd say.
Yeah.
It's very cool. Two very quick, poignant answers. We're gonna push it. And
I can see you looking at the screen like, oh, we're running out.
Well, it always gets so good towards the end and stuff.
We'll do another one of these.
We have, let's do this again. We're going to do this again with more time. Question from Keelan's, do you have any advice on finding your niche?
I think it comes from doing what you love. I discovered time-lapse photography 8 years ago, I think. I saw a video and I was like, whoa, this is impressive. What is it? How does it work? Can I do it? Tried it that night. Haven't stopped shooting since.
Right.
So it was luck, but I think I would have always discovered time-lapse as like something I was intrigued by and found it really cool. And I love doing it. Like, I do it for work, but in my spare time I shoot time-lapses all the time because it's my hobby. It's gotten out of hand now. It's my job, but that turns out to be this big niche. But I wasn't like, oh, I need a niche. I think it's good to be in a niche. It's good to have a niche. You don't necessarily need one. And again, I think a lot of your work will come from your own personality and who you are as a person. But yeah, I think I wouldn't be too stressed if you don't have a niche. As long as you're making what you feel like you should be making, then yeah.
Excellent.
And just be willing to experiment. And if you wake up one day and you think, oh, I wonder what would happen if I like attached a camera to my dog and went to the park and filmed this thing in this weird frame rate and then just go do it.
You're gonna have a
Even
good
if
day.
no
That's
one
good.
cares, like no one else watches it, put it on, put it online. If it gets 5 likes, great. You know, if you had fun, do it again. Like, and just experiment. There's no, like, I have a friend who's a beatboxer, and you know, we're both like in our 30s, and when we met when we were at high school in Brisbane, and everyone was like, dude, what are you doing with your life? Like, beatboxing? He has the most watched TED Talk of all time, and he travels the world like full time, just beatboxing. It's all he does. You know, it's like you can do anything. Anything can be a career nowadays. Whatever it is, someone's going to need that thing somewhere, somehow, you know?
I think
Tom's always a good inspo for that.
Cool.
He's amazing. Tom Thumb, check him out.
He's wild. I've seen him a few times at some events.
Oh, he's the best.
That's amazing advice. We're right on time.
How good.
We are going to have to do this again because there's 1,000 things I want to ask you guys. Thank you so much for your time. Where can people find out more about you? Like online? What's the best place?
Instagram. That's my little hub for info.
What's
it's just
your
my name,
Instagram
Selena
handle?
Miles.
Selena Miles?
Yeah.
Cool. Got that URL down pat. Got the little handle.
Yeah,
perfect.
nice and easy.
It's always good having every handle right. With like your own
Same
name
thing.
across all the I'm Matt Joes online, MATJOEZ. I've started a blog recently, mainly on Instagram and YouTube. But yeah, you find me. I think it depends on what you like to consume. That's where you'll go back to. Like, you'll have a bunch of Instagrammers or people that spend more time on YouTube. But yeah, Matt Joes.
Perfect. Thank you both very much, and thank you all thank you for the wonderful questions, and thank you for joining us for another Adobe APAC Live. We'll be back in 2 weeks, I think is our next one scheduled. I hope you can join in, and we'll see you then.